Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're waiting Mr. Thompson's arrival, so we'll just be at ease until he's brought in. Thank you.
Superior Court stands at ease. Seated in the quiet Superior Court. Back in session.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. We will pick up where we left off yesterday. Sergeant Pike, do you recognize you're still under oath, sir?
I do.
All right, very good. And I believe Mr. Latour, or Mr. Bowman, I don't recall.
It was me, and I had passed your own.
You had passed. So if Ms. Manette, if you have questions for this witness.
Yes. Good morning, Sergeant Pike.
Good morning.
You spend a lot of your days looking at downloads of cell phones, right?
Yes.
And actually downloading them.
Yes.
And you're a law enforcement officer, right?
I am.
And I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Do y'all have a running joke in your department about if somebody saw your search history?
No.
No? Okay. Might a police officer's search history look weird or strange if it were looked at because of their job?
Well, I think it's what perception you have and weird. I would say no.
Okay. could somebody's job, for example, have them Google things that might look strange if you didn't know what their job was?
I believe that most people separate their work from their personal data. This is something that has been in our society for a bit now, mainly because people understand that some of that information when they're at work and doing things at work are they can be seen by other people. So I would say that what people do at work would more than likely not be that interesting unless they were in an interesting job, right? But even then, it would be very specific to whatever their job was and whatever their personal searches were.
Okay, so Sergeant Pike, where I'm sort of getting is context can matter to search histories. Is that right? Is that fair?
Yes.
And there can be reasons people search things that you can't surmise just from their search history. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Now I want to talk about some things that we do know about Austin. Austin is a teenager, right?
Yes.
And he goes to high school.
Yes.
High schools have mass shooter drills, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And people talk about mass shootings when they happen, right?
Yes.
And in 2022, the Buffalo mass shooting happened, didn't it?
I don't recall the exact date, but I believe it was around that time.
Would May 14th of 2022 make sense around that time?
I still don't have to take your word.
Okay. And that was in the media a lot, wasn't it?
I believe so.
And Uvalde happened that year, didn't it?
I believe so.
And that was really in the media, wasn't it?
Very much so.
Almost daily updates about new information, right?
Yes.
For months, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a copy of your report up there?
I do.
Wonderful. I want to go through and talk about your report, and I'm just going to try and go sequentially through, but we may zigzag around some information.
Okay.
I am going to come back and talk about page 10, but I'm going to do that a little later.
Okay.
So let's go to page 11 and start looking at page 11 of your report.
Okay.
So on this page, we have some web browsing activity, and that is centered around the 2020 and 2021 time period. Is that fair?
Yes.
And I want to point something out on this. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line down. It says ABC 11/tag/mass shooting. That was something that you read off of the screen yesterday on the spreadsheet, correct?
I believe so.
And I believe in that spreadsheet, when you read that, it had a different timestamp than the timestamp we see here. Is that right?
That's right.
When we saw it on the green spreadsheet up there, what we were looking at was the fave icon database, right?
Yeah, the favicons. That's correct.
And with those, if they don't have that IE number that gives us a time and date, right?
The EI, yes.
EI, I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
Then what we're seeing is the date of the last time that general website was visited, correct?
It's the last time that the favicon had been downloaded, and in that general time frame, yes.
And so that's not the date or the time of the actual web browsing activity necessarily.
Correct.
But here we actually have a date and time that appears to be of that web browsing activity.
It does.
Because that comes from a different database.
It does.
So different databases can give us different information. Is that
Correct.
right? And I just want to be clear because for that spreadsheet, Google had a time of 10:13 at about 6 p.m. for all of their entries on the favicon database. Is that right?
Not Google, but the way that the database was entering the dates and times, they're not the actual visited times. That's why it's difficult to determine when the actual date and time is, and that's why you have to use other methods to obtain it.
Correct. And so for a lot of what we looked at, there were those EI codes that gave us a date and time within that database, correct?
It was within the link of the URL.
But for ones that didn't have that EI, we just got that date and time of that last download of the icon, correct?
It's in a general time frame of the last time it was downloaded from that link. So like if you went to CNN and the first time it went to CNN, it would download that favicon, and then until you revisited or got a new favicon for that site, it would still use that same date. So you can get a range based on other links, but the more accurate, and what you're referencing here on page 11, is the rejected resources, is a more accurate timestamp. And the reason for that is it catalogs the actual link that the person has visited, and then if there was a rejected favicon, that icon that's in the actual browser, then it will record that link in time.
Correct. And so while there was a date and time on that spreadsheet that you were reading from yesterday, this is the correct one for that particular URL. Is that fair?
For this URL in that table inside of the database, correct.
Okay. And so that was visited in 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving to page 12, looking at the 1, 2, 3, 4th entry down. This is about a shooting at a Special Olympics carnival in Knightdale, correct?
Yes.
Are you aware that that had happened on 4/4/22?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. And so that was visited on 4/4/22, correct?
Yes.
And like we said, context can matter, right?
Sure.
And so this was a current event at that time.
Yes.
Okay. The next entry down, you had included as well, and it is a website it's a website visit about humane ways to shoot animals when you are hunting, correct?
It says humane shooting and shot placement, if I'm looking at the correct one that you're referencing.
Correct. And the base URL is farmerassist.com.
Yes, .au.
Mm-hmm. And did you happen to look at that link at all?
I didn't actually go to the site. I just parsed out, because there was thousands and thousands of them.
Okay. All right. And then moving to the next entry, we touched on this, but the Buffalo mass shooting happened in May of 2022, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Going to the next page, page 13, I want to address something that you said on direct about this page. You said you referred to these as searches, but I want to be clear, these were not necessarily searches, these are web browsing activity, correct?
Correct. These are not necessarily searches. Most of these appear to be links that were visited.
And you don't know how those links got there, right?
Well, whoever was using the phone at the time would have had to have visited these sites.
But you don't know if it was a link clicked off of, say, a news alert email.
I don't know the progression of how they got there.
You don't know if somebody texted a link to a story or an article, right?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. All right. Going on to page 14, talking about the Google searches. And this is where we get into these EIs that give us a more specific date and time, right?
That's correct.
You mentioned yesterday about the difference between what was input into the Google search bar versus what was actually searched, because there's that suggestive search, right?
It's predictive searching. That's right, yeah. So dependent upon how a person types it, and then if they select the predictive search. So they can actually type the same sentence or search string, and then click on the predictive search, and it will produce a Q and an OQ.
Okay. So as you're typing, it starts to fill in the end sometimes. We've all sort of seen that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a predictive
And
search.
that's a predictive. So we can tell the difference between what somebody typed, right?
Correct.
And then what was predicted at the end of that they might have hit enter and let that be the search.
Yes.
Okay. But also, when you search something on Google, they have suggested searches, correct?
Yes.
And those come up as links, right?
I believe so, yes.
And if you click on a link like that, how would that appear in this URL?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. So it is possible that some of these were suggested searches. Is that fair?
The suggested searches would be based upon the person's input. It wouldn't just randomly create them. So
Yes.
it would create a search based on what the user was inputting.
But if a user input something about one mass shooting, it might suggest a search about another mass shooting. Fair?
That's possible, yes.
And so what can happen is that there are related searches that come up that get clicked on for additional web browsing activity. Fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Going to page 16. At the top of that page is some Quora.com entries. And I want to start by saying what I noticed here is that the exact date and time and millisecond are the same for both Quora's sort of entries that were looked at. Is this because this is part of that fave icon where we don't actually know the date or time that this was viewed?
That is correct.
Okay. So those are not the time that they were viewed necessarily.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to be clear on that.
Yes, it would be in that range.
Could be in that range, but it could also be in like 2020, right?
No, it wouldn't be that far apart. It would be within a more compacted range of time because they're entered sequentially.
So I'm going to take a time out here and go back to that ABC entry.
Okay.
Because I might be missing something. Let me find that. That ABC entry was on page 11. And that timestamp is 12/21 of 2020. Is that right?
You're on page 11, all right? Yes.
But I believe the timestamp that we saw on the Fave Icon database was in 2022.
Yes.
And so for that one, the Fave Icon was reported as 2022, but the search was done in 2020, correct?
For this, the rejected resources, yes. This is a different table inside of that database. So it could be another entry for that same website.
Okay. And I apologize, I might be missing something, but are you saying it's not possible that something with a Fave Icon recorded date in 2022 was actually looked at in 2020?
I would say it's possible, but it's not probable.
Okay.
It's a low probability.
Okay. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't actually know when these core entries were viewed. Is that fair?
We have a range.
What's the range?
It would more than likely be sometime in 2022. It's very possible. It doesn't. The entries again are based upon clicking and the entry for the favicon, and then if other things are entered into the database, the favicon database, and then that same link is then revisited, it will then change the timestamp. So it's a little bit. There's a little bit of nuance to it, and it's not 100% accurate. So.
Well, but these dates that we're looking at here on this thing, it's more than just not 100% accurate. Those are not reliable dates and times at all for those views, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Quora.com is a website where people ask questions and get answers from the community. Is that right?
That is correct.
These questions that are sort of sitting here, these were not questions that Austin asked. They were questions other people asked and he later viewed. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of Austin putting these in. I don't have any knowledge of that.
Okay. All Moving down on that page to the google.com listings, where we get into, I think, the legal consequences. This first entry is from September 10th of 2021, is that right?
That is correct.
And that would have been when Austin was 13, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And what we see kind of going through this is, a lot of questions about legal stuff, criminal law, and potential consequences. As we flip through the pages, we see that it's regular queries every few days. Is that fair?
Some of these go into November. Some for the same day. They may be just minutes apart. So they may be either a refresh or a revisit to that site or a click back.
And on page 18, is there a stand your ground law in New York, right?
Yes,
And that was 3/3 of 2021?
that is correct.
And Austin doesn't live in New York, does he?
No.
Okay. And then continuing to move through, I want to apologize, and I have to flip. We have continued searches as we go through the next few pages, and we're getting into 2021. But again, ongoing requests for information about potential legal consequences for various crimes, sentences, and what certain crimes are. Correct?
Yes. Well, if you could reference the page you're referencing. So you're just keeping going through them. Yeah. Yes.
And
Correct.
then we get to page 25. I want to look at page 25 specifically.
Okay.
This first full entry that we see is 10/5/2021, right?
Correct.
And that was for the minimum sentence for prostitution, right?
Correct.
You don't have any information that Austin was interested in prostituting himself, do you?
No.
Okay. All right. I want to go to page 34 now. Again, so this is the bond making materials, and the first entry is Amazon.com. And we have this 10/3/2022 with the identical millisecond timestamp on all of those entries. Is that right?
Yes, they have millisecond timestamps.
Yes, and they are all the same, right?
Yes.
And so this is indicating that we're in that zone where we don't actually know when these were done.
Correct.
Okay. So that's not an accurate time and date as to when those Amazon web browsing activities occurred, correct?
That is correct.
Similarly, for the Britannica.com entries, same thing. We have a 10/30/2020 timestamp, correct?
Correct.
But it's all the same, and so we don't actually know when those were done, right?
Correct.
Okay. And moving through, looking at the next page, I'm not going to continue to go down that line, but these are all sort of the same sort of thing where we don't actually know when these were done.
Correct.
Okay. Now we get into page 36, and this is the Google.com entries, where we have explosives and things like that, right?
Yes.
And for these entries, most of them have that EI notation. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So we know when those occur, right?
Yes.
All right. Moving on that page, looking at the third, fourth, and sixth entries.
Okay.
These occurred on September 12th of 2020, correct?
That is correct.
And we have a timestamp that would indicate when each one occurred, right?
Yes.
And fair to say that those three entries, they all occurred within a 12-minute time period.
They did.
Okay. And did you look at his overall sort of web browsing patterns on his phone?
in a broad sense when it came to specific items. So
Okay. And did he commonly, when he had sequential searches, were they commonly pretty quick in succession?
I can't recall the time frames. If you're asking me for a broad analysis of time, I don't know.
All right, well, let's look at it. Looking at the last entry on that page and the first two on the next page, those are several entries that occurred September 28th of 2020. Is that
Yes,
right?
that is correct.
And did those 3 entries occur within a 2-minute time period?
They do.
Okay. Moving down further on that page, we have the 2 last full entries on that page. 10/30/2020 timestamp for those 2?
The more accurate is if you're talking about the last 2 or the 2 before the last one.
Yes, the 2 last full ones.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah.
They are within minutes, or actually within minutes of each other.
Okay. All right, I am going to move on to another area of this report. Let's pause on page 50.
Okay.
Because at this point, we have gone from page 36 to page 50 of the Google searches on bond-making materials, right?
Yes. So page 50 is, I believe, one of the few. No, it continues to go on.
Yeah, it does. Looking at the last entry on page 50, we're still in 2020, right?
Yes.
Okay. And moving on, let's continue to go through. And if we get to page 58, we're at the bottom of page 58, we're in March of 2021. Is that right?
Yes.
So continuing to go through, the last entry you have on this point is November of 2021. Is that right?
If you could tell me the page
I
reference.
apologize, page 60.
Okay. Yes, November of 2021.
So fair to say that a lot of the Google searching surrounding these explosives was heavily concentrated in 2020 and 2021.
The ones that were in the phone, correct?
Okay, thank you. Looking at the bottom of page 60, we move into mass shootings and the Google entries for that, right?
Yes.
And this first one that you have listed at the bottom of the page, this occurred in January of 2020, correct?
That is correct.
And at that point, Austin would have been 12, right?
I'll take your word for it.
If he were born in June, he would be 12, sort of going backwards. He'd be 12 in January of 2020, right?
Okay.
Looking at the next page, page 61, the first 2 entries, they occurred on the same day, correct?
Yes.
And they occurred in quick succession, 7 seconds?
Yes.
Okay. And moving down that row to the third to last and second to last, those occurred on the same day, correct?
Correct.
And they are 18 seconds apart, right?
Yes.
So we're seeing more of that quick succession of web browsing activity, right?
There are 2 different searches,
Yes.
so it would be one search and then another search. So, but they are in quick succession.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move to page. Let's go ahead and move to page 63.
Okay.
Looking at these entries, on this page, we're all on the same day, correct?
Yes.
And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, right?
Yes.
And they all occurred within about 3 minutes of each other. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right, if we move to page 64, we go into school search, school shootings under google.com.
Yes.
Right. Looking at page 65. If we look at, so again, we're starting back in January of 2020 on this, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if we look at the third entry, down to the first entry on the next page, those were all done on the same day, right?
When you say that, are you talking about on page 65?
65 on the 66.
On the 66?
Yes. So they're January 23rd of 2020, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 searches? Is that right?
Yes.
And they're all done within about 6 or 7 minutes of each other total?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. I want to move into, or I want to move on to page 70. You talked about this a little on your direct. This is the Google searches for the interior of Knightdale High School.
Correct.
Right. And you mentioned that you pulled that out because you had seen stuff about school shootings in his phone, right?
That is correct.
And you knew he was a student at Knightdale High School, right?
Yes.
Are you aware that we have homework assignments in which he drew a diagram of the school at one point?
I was not.
And also a PowerPoint where he included pictures of the school?
No, I was not aware.
Okay. Additionally, 1-3 would have been the first day of that semester of school. Does that sound right to you?
No, I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Does a new semester typically start in January?
Sure. I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
With year-round school, I know there's complicated school schedules. I didn't know Austin's schedule. And then there's people who homeschool. I really have no knowledge of Austin. Well, other than that he went to Knightdale High, but I don't know if it's a year-round school or not.
Okay. Okay. We'll leave that alone. All right. And I do want to briefly mention, you didn't talk about it much, if at all, on direct, but page 76 starts the analysis of the math book that you found was attributed to Austin, right?
Yes.
Almost all, if not all, of the activity that you reported on this phone was from 2019 to 2020, correct?
I believe so, yes. It was very limited.
Okay. And a lot of it is YouTube content?
There's some Amazon searches that were conducted, as well as YouTube, and some Google searches. So it's a kind of a mix.
Okay. But that seems to be something that was not used terribly recently before this. Is that fair?
I don't recall any recent, other than, no, it was not very recent.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move out of the report for a few minutes.
Okay.
And, Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I am going to hand you what I have marked as Defendant's Exhibit 2. Now, Sergeant Pike, we talked a little about how different databases can show different things, but there's also different programs that interpret the raw data. Is that fair?
That is fair.
And sometimes they can pull different information out from each other. Is that fair?
Very fair.
And so you used multiple programs in this case.
I did.
And one of those was Axiom.
I did.
And does this appear to be an excerpt from your Axiom extraction of the phone or interpretation? Yes. Okay. And Your Honor, at this time I'd move to admit Defendant's Exhibit 2.
Any objection?
There you're on.
And does this appear to you, Sergeant Pike, to be a set of web browsing activities that occurred on October 7th of 2022?
It is searches and, well, I'm sorry, the web activity. However, one of the methods of recovery for this was something called carving. And in order for me to explain that, we have to kind of go into how this works. So if you think about data that is potentially deleted or removed, you can go into a database or a data and carve out that information. The problem you have with carving it is that it is not the most accurate with its information and has a tendency to give you false positives. So it's not a very reliable bit of data, but it is it can provide you information that was no longer there. And if you look inside of these particular searches, you'll see that the recovery method says carving. So it's not always the best method for obtaining data.
Okay. But this is data that you obtained from the phone that is at least possible data.
Correct. It's carved data from the histories database, which is the main database inside of the Safari web browser.
Okay. And it has the entries listed backwards. Is that right, sort of time-wise?
Yes.
Okay.
You'd have to start from the last to
Start from
go.
the last.
Yes.
So let's start from the last.
Okay.
So according to this, on October 7th of 2022 at 4:18 p.m., this was not a search, it was a view of an article. Is that right?
If you can reference what record number are you looking at?
12.
12? Oh, okay. It's on the other page. Sorry. I'm not sure if it was a search or if it was a web page. It appears to be a web page. This is, again, the issue with carving is that it's not the most accurate and the most data rich. It's just fragments, as you would, of information.
Does it say the Washington Post?
It does. The information it is showing is why so many mass shooters are angry young men, - the Washington Post.
Does that sound like it could be an article?
It could be.
And if it's an article, you don't necessarily know how he got there, right?
Correct.
And then, so that was at 4:18:01. And then at 4:18:34, we start to see some Google activity. Is that right?
Can you reference the record that you're speaking
so the
of?
one immediately above it, record 11 and record 10, we're seeing some sort of Google activity, right?
Some sort of Google activity, correct. And again, you have to take these timestamps, just as we did with the favicons. These timestamps are not very reliable either.
And then we start seeing, right in the same time zone, 4:18:43, potential Google searches of why do some people hate society, right?
Can you reference the record number?
Record 8 and record 7.
Yes.
And then it appears on record 6 that leads to a 4:18:45 Quora. Why do some people hate society?
Correct.
And then looking at, kind of moving along from that sort of searching, we get up to 4:19:48. Person who killed people because they were destroying the planet.
Correct.
And that appears to be a Google search.
Yes.
And then an identical Google search a second later, record number 1.
Yes.
And so this activity, according to this database, this activity all occurs within about a 2-minute time frame. Is that fair?
No, because it's the process of carving is not as accurate as again, it's like the favicons. Well, it still gives you hours, minutes, and seconds. It's not highly reliable.
Okay. But as we've discussed, there's other examples of that very quick web browsing, correct?
Sure. Yes.
And so it's certainly possible that that was quick web browsing.
For this particular data set, it's possible, but not the probability of it due to the nature of the data and its unreliability is hard to say.
Okay. All right. I do want to go back to page 10 of your report, but I'm actually going to bring you up just that page.
Okay.
Do you have anything to write with up there?
No.
Okay, I will bring you something, as well as a calculator. You're on the way approach?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm handing you what I have marked as Defendant's Exhibit 3. Is this an identical copy, just in black and white?
It is.
And I'm going to leave this calculator and this pen for you, okay?
Okay.
You testified yesterday that this was a lot of work that you did to sort of classify and categorize web browsing activity from the favicon database, right?
Yes.
And the favicon database was what we saw on the screen up there yesterday, right?
Yes.
And that database has 29,460 entries in it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So what I want to do is I want to sort of get a view of what this search history looks like. So I'm going to ask you to calculate the percentages for these categories. Okay?
Okay.
If you want to write 29,460 down at the bottom of that page I handed you, just so that you remember that number.
$29,000.
460.
Okay.
And let's go ahead and start here with the law searches concerning assaults, rapes, murders, and manslaughter.
Wait. Repeat that, please.
Law searches concerning assaults, rapes, murder, manslaughter, assaults on law enforcement officers, all of that. That category has 148 entries.
Okay.
If you could calculate the percentage of that category of his overall favicon database.
All right. Sorry, I keep double tapping on this. If you're asking me what percentage out of that, I would say it would be a small. How about we do that for...
Why don't I come on up and we'll do it together?
Okay.
You know what I approach?
Yes.
Judge, if she knows the percentage and she wants to just ask him, is this the percentage sound fair, we're happy to stipulate to that.
If you know, you're welcome to ask it that way as well, but if you wanted to walk through the arithmetic, you can do that as well.
I don't have all of them written down myself, Your Honor. Okay, so 148
Okay.
divided by 29460, and then we would multiply that by 100, right?
Sure.
And we get 0.50,
That's what it says.
so 0.5% of his overall search history. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to be able to see too, so you can make sure, keep me honest.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I am going to come down here to, let's do serial killers, 32. So 32 divided by 29460, and then we're going to multiply that by 100. So So that would be 0.1% of his overall search history?
Yes.
Okay. Let's do school shootings. 25 divided by 29460 times 100. 0.085%. Is that right?
That's what it says.
Okay. So less than 0.1%. Is that right?
Yes.
And everything below that on that chart has less entries. Is that fair?
That is correct.
Okay. And so they're going to be less than 0.01% of his search history. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
In
Thank
this
you.
database.
In this database. All right. Am I on 4? Okay. All right. And, Your Honor, may I approach again?
Yes.
Okay. Sergeant Pike, I am handing you what I have marked as Defendant's Exhibit 4. I'm taking this sheet out just so that we can manipulate this sheet. So, do these appear to be categories that are not included on your sheet over there?
Yes.
And if you will look with me in this binder, do those categories appear to be entries from your Fave Icon database?
I don't know where this came from.
Okay.
This is not my report, so I'm not sure where this came from. That's a general color and column. So I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. Well, let's do it this way. I'll leave this with you.
Okay.
And if you want the binder, you can use it for reference. But would it surprise you that there were over 1,500 searches that appeared to be related to his schoolwork?
Sustained as to whether it's surprising or not. You can ask him whether he knows that or not.
Does it sound accurate that there were over 1,500 searches related to his schoolwork?
I don't know how many there were.
Okay. You looked through the searches on his phone, right?
Yes.
You looked through the web browsing activity on his phone, right?
Correct.
You prepared an extensive report in this case, correct?
I did.
You were looking for things that you felt were relevant to this crime, right?
Yes.
But you did see other things on his phone, correct?
Yes.
Things that aren't relevant to this crime, right?
Thousands, yes.
Yes, thousands, tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands.
Some common themes of things you might have seen that weren't related to this crime directly might include schoolwork, right?
It's probable.
Video games?
Objection if she's stated that these aren't relevant to the crime. And it's not relevant inquiry.
Overruled.
He searched video games a lot?
I don't recall how many. If he searched it a lot or a little, I don't really recall seeing any video games.
So you really just looked at searches that had to do with shootings and things like that?
I looked at a vast majority of them, but I didn't commit to memory all of them.
Do you remember seeing a lot of requests for definitions in his search history?
I don't recall if there were definitions in terms of defining things, I guess you can say. No, I don't recall exactly definitions.
So what I'm understanding is that these 2,400 searches on your page 10 of your report, that's where your hyper-focus was, right?
Yes, it was my focus to find this information.
And as we've discussed, context of searches can matter, right?
They can.
And so this 2,400 searches total that you looked at, that constitutes less than 10% of that database, correct?
Yes, it would,
And so the other
give or take.
The other 90% was not of concern to you.
I wouldn't say it wasn't of concern, but it wasn't relevant.
Wasn't relevant.
Right.
Okay. I want to talk about what we don't see on this phone. This was an iPhone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And often a source of evidence on an iPhone is the notes section, right?
It can be, yes.
People put in the notes sections all kinds of things that can be incriminating, right?
Sometimes.
There wasn't anything in his notes section, was there? That was of relevance?
Not that I recall.
There were no drafts of a goodbye note, for example.
I don't recall that. No.
There was no manifesto.
No.
There were no notes about people who had wronged him.
No.
There were no descriptions of possible routes to take, right?
No, not exactly that. So.
There wasn't a hyper focus anywhere on his phone about climate change, right?
No.
Or humans destroying the earth. That wasn't a hyper focus.
No.
Okay. Moving away. There wasn't a packing list, was there, of things to put in a backpack, say?
There was a list of things in Amazon, but in those terms of putting into a backpack, no.
Okay. There was no evidence he had been sort of sucked into extremist views on his phone?
There was no evidence of that.
There was nothing that indicated he had a desire for notoriety. Fair?
Objection.
Sustained.
Okay. And there's no evidence of any communication about plans to do anything violent.
With someone else, no.
Yeah. No further questions, Your Honor.
Read your back.
Very, very briefly, Sergeant, I just want to ask you, we've spent a lot of time talking about the dates on these searches. Fair?
Fair.
Everything that you have talked about as a search or website that was visited was something that was visited on that phone, correct?
Correct.
And this crime occurred in October of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And he got the phone less than 2 years before that?
Correct.
So everything that was searched was on this phone and in this databases and viewed was within a 2-year span.
Yes.
Thank you. No other questions.
Brother.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Your Honor, I have retrieved the binder that I think is up there still.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, okay, here's, is this the binder that you
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna approach.
Yes. And then you move for admission of Exhibit 2. Further evidence for the state.
Yes, Your Honor. Before this witness, I would like to approach and provide to the court the victim impact statement that has been sent to our office of Mr. Robert Steele, who was at the time the fiance of Mary Marshall.
Yes.
He provided something in writing, and I've marked it as State's Exhibit 24. For identification purposes, have provided a copy of that to defense counsel. If I can approach.
So we're just simply entering this into the record for my review, is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
That's fine. Thank you. Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 24?
No, Your Honor.
All right, it's received.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the state would call Dr. Carrie Gibson.
Your Honor, I will be objecting to this witness. This is a FBI profiler who has no individual information about Austin Thompson. I cannot imagine how this is relevant at a sentencing hearing. She doesn't know anything about Austin or this crime. We have admitted he committed a mass shooting. I cannot foresee how this is helpful at this point.
Your Honor, Dr. Gibson is the unit chief of the behavioral analysis unit of the FBI. She has extensive experience researching, studying targeted violence resulting in mass casualties. She is a published expert in this field. She is a frequent speaker and trainer of law enforcement and other stakeholders in the topic of the identification, prevention of mass shootings. She is a licensed psychologist and can certainly present to the court a subject matter expertise of these types of situations, and will be able to provide what we believe would be relevant evidence for the court to hear. Certainly would ask that Your Honor receive her testimony, and if Your Honor decides that it is not relevant, you can certainly make that determination. But we believe that she would be relevant in explaining some of these overarching themes of what we've got here.
Anything further?
No.
I will receive the information. I don't believe that simply receiving it would rise to a level that it would be so prejudicial that it would render these proceedings fundamentally unfair. Obviously, as the court receiving this information, I will assign whatever weight it is due. I accept the fact that the defense has pointed out that this witness has not examined Mr. Thompson, has no personal knowledge of Mr. Thompson, but I'm also do find that it may be relevant and probative to hear overarching theories that this witness may have to offer the court. So I'm going to receive it and assign whatever weight and relevance I deem appropriate after I've conferred all of the evidence in this case.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state would call Dr. Gibson.
Come on up, Dr. Gibson. Good morning, Dr. Gibson. Place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right, face the microphone.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Do.
Thank you, baby.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Gibson. Can you just introduce yourself to the court and spell your last name?
Yes. My name is Dr. Carrie Gibson. It's K-A-R-I-E, and then last name is G-I-B-S-O-N.
And how are you employed?
I am a supervisory special agent with the FBI.
And how long have you been in that particular role?
So I've been a special agent with the FBI for over 19 years, but specifically a supervisory special agent for almost 11 years now.
And can you tell the court what you do in your current role?
Currently, the last 4 years, I've been the unit chief of the Behavioral Analysis Unit 1, where our mission is to prevent acts of terrorism and targeted violence. So I lead a team of around 20 individuals where that is our focus, to be proactively involved in the prevention of mass violence and terrorism. In that role, we provide behavioral support to our local, federal, and state law enforcement officers in the cases that we provide assistance with.
And prior to this role, what other roles have you had with the FBI?
Prior prior to becoming the unit chief of the behavioral analysis unit, I was a profiler there for almost 7 years in the same unit, working to prevent acts of targeted violence and terrorism, responding to active shooter events, as well as completing research and publication on those events. And then prior to that, I was a special agent in the FBI's Minneapolis division.
And prior to joining the FBI, what did you do?
I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and so I was an active duty Air Force psychologist for 4 years. And then after I left the United States Air Force, I worked for 1 year for Washington State Hospital, completing court-ordered assessments such as competency stand trial, mental state at time of offense, and civil commitment proceedings.
And you mentioned, are you still a licensed psychologist?
Yes, I am. I hold a license in the state of Minnesota since 2005, and in the state of Virginia, or the Commonwealth of Virginia, since 2023.
And do you hold any other licensures?
No other licensures, no.
In terms of, I think you mentioned, can you describe some of the research that you've done and publications, if any, that you've participated in or written yourself?
Sure. So for the role, one of our primary roles at the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit is to provide resources and research to really inform whatever fact pattern that we're looking at, to really understand how we can be proactive and helpful in that space. And so in my unit of the Behavioral Analysis Unit 1, our focus is obviously on prevention. And so our first publication that I had the opportunity to be a part of, I was one of 9 authors. It's Making Prevention a Reality, where really it's a resource, a compendium of key data that's important, that focuses on how do you identify, assess, and manage the concern for targeted violence. That was published in 2017. From there, we've gone on to really try to understand the difference between individuals that go on to commit an act of targeted violence versus somebody who is on the pathway to violence who does not commit an act of targeted violence. And all of that is done in the spirit to inform prevention so that we can help move people off of the pathway to violence before an attack happens.
And do you you've mentioned some trainings. Do you speak to training groups about this and other people involved in this type of work?
Yes, over the last 11 years, I've been very active in providing training to our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners, both in the United States and internationally, as well as other members of our community, to include mental health practitioners, school administrators, college administrators, again, trying to get that training and on the pre-attack behavior indicators of what to look for to be able to inform those prevention efforts.
And have you testified in court about this subject matter before?
Yes, I have.
Okay, approximately how many times, do you know?
So I have testified in federal court one time on the pathway to targeted violence, and then I have testified numerous times as a subject matter expert in state court related as a clinical psychologist.
Your Honor, this time would tender Dr. Gibson as an expert in the field of targeted violence.
Any objection?
No objection to the tendering.
All right, her testimony will be received as proper.
Dr. Gibson, you mentioned one of those articles that you were involved in. You were an author, being Making a Prevention a Reality. Did you also author an article entitled Pathway to Targeted Violence, Can Early Intervention Work?
Yes, I was one of the authors on that. It was published in 2024.
And did Your Honor, if I could approach, I'd like to provide to the court what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 25, which is a binder containing both of those articles as well as Dr. Gibson's CV.
Yes. it is allowed.
So, Dr. Gibson, can you tell the court what is targeted violence?
Yes, so when we're looking at these cases, targeted violence is a term that was coined in 1999 by Dr. Robert Fine and Brian Boskuhl with their different research that they completed and related specifically to assassins and attempted assassins. And what they found in that research is that they follow a very specific trajectory when they go on to commit that attack. And that's where targeted violence term was coined, and it means specifically targeting an individual or person or agency or entity related to that attack.
Okay. And that can be opposed to what kind of violence?
So targeted violence is specifically referring to predatory violence, where someone considers, plans, and prepares before they commit that attack. And that's different from effective violence, where it's more of an emotional violence, more of a response to an emotional situation, where you have someone who reacts in that moment and haven't previously planned to do anything in that moment.
And this has been your kind of focus area of research and study and work for how long?
For the last 11 years that I've been at the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit.
And when we talk about acts of targeted violence, based on your research, is it common for this to be a targeted act of violence to be a first kind of offense, or is this something that someone has done multiple acts of violence and ends up at a targeted act?
So in these cases, the challenge is that when you're looking for individuals that are progressing on the pathway to violence to commit this type of an act, there's a lot of considering, planning, and preparing that goes into it, but it can definitely be the first time that they do any type of violence can be the actual targeted violent attack. And that can be the challenge in the prevention space, is that if we go off of if someone was violent in the past to really inform us of their violence in the future, we find that that's not very accurate or very helpful in this space. That really we have to go at what are the behaviors that we're seeing and observing, and what is that fact pattern when you put it into the different factors of the research, what's enhancing to targeted violence.
Now, you've mentioned the pathway to violence. Can you just briefly kind of give us an overarching view of what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. The pathway to violence has been around since the 90s. It was first comes into concept in 1998 with Dr. Fine and Brian Boskuhl from the United States Secret Service. And they had culminated this 5-year study related to the assassins and the attempted assassins that I talked about that started in 1992. Ultimately, out of that research, they see that these individuals who were committing these assassins or attempted assassinations followed a very specific trajectory. They considered, planned, and prepared. In 1999, we see that that same type of concept related to targeted violence, that term gets coined. It gets applied to school violence and school shootings, where they looked at 37 cases of school violence, and they found that those same concepts, that trajectory where people consider, planned, and prepared, was also applicable to school violence. Then we have in 2003 Calhoun and Weston, who then augment those thoughts and considerations that were found from that operational research that was conducted in the 90s, and they develop a very specific graph that shows those steps and really where you get the formalized steps of the pathway. And really in that concept, what we see is that the pathway starts with a grievance. It can be a personal slight, it can be a humiliation, it can be something that's unbearable, it can be real or perceived, something that they struggle to move past. It also is incredibly individualized for that person. And so they are in that space where they have a problem, they're trying to figure out how to solve it, and then it progresses to the next step. And I'm happy to go on if you want me to.
Well, I want to stop you there. You mentioned a kind of very specific graph. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 26 and ask you, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
We're going to move to admit State's Exhibit 26 and publish on the screen.
This one up.
No further objections beyond my initial, Your Honor.
All right, objections noted. Several rules, it's allowed. Are you ready to project?
Yes, Your Honor. So, Dr. Gibson, what we've got on the screen, this is this what you've referred to as the kind of the chart of the pathway to violence?
Yes, it is.
And can you talk to us? You just mentioned grievance, and that is typically how things, maybe the first step. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. And you mentioned several different types of grievances or things that could be real or perceived grievances. Right? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, and so when you have an individual that is beginning to progress in the pathway to violence, there is this, the grievance, like I said, a personal slight or an injustice that has occurred for them. And for them, they're trying to work through that to really understand what it means and what they can do with it. And it really is based on perception. And so it really can be real or perceived. So if I was in the same situation with an individual, for example, I may find the situation that was upsetting or the problem that they're struggling with not to really be something of that significance. But for that person, it may be very significant. And that's really what matters in this case, is the person's thoughts and feelings related to those issues connected to the grievance.
And so this is would this be something that's very personal to them?
Yes, it's a very personal journey for them.
And in your research, because of the fact that this is very personal, is this something that is can be hard to observe?
Yeah, so in our research, what we've found is that a lot of times we are able to see the grievance, where we're able to see somebody, that injustice or that slight that has happened to them that they're holding on to. But in our research, we found in 21% of the time that we weren't able to determine the grievance. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's not there, but one explanation is that it's highly personal and it would require that person to inform the specifics of the grievance.
And you mentioned, so what types of things fall into kind of a bucket of grievances that your research has shown?
So there can be several different factors here. You can have, like I said, you can have a slight that has happened to them, a humiliation that has occurred, some type of embarrassing situation that they can't move past, that they're holding on to. You also can have more global grievances. You can be hopeless and helpless and frustrated, just in general, more globally. And then you can also have more of personally driven reasons as to why you are in that space, right? That the key things specific to that individual, their life, that really keeps them anchored in being potentially a grievance collector or being upset with the injustices that they've have occurred in their life.
And can you explain to the court how maybe a desire for notoriety would play into this grievance stage?
Yeah, so sometimes when we're looking at the grievance factors, what we will see is that somebody is really angry and frustrated with being a nobody, and they really seek to be a somebody. And so you find that you have this real perversion of notoriety, that perversion of glory that could occur, that really propels them into that wanting to have that notoriety to really help demonstrate the wrong that has happened to them and make it right.
And sometimes along this, in the grievance stage, there's also, your research has indicated, besides just the desire to solve this problem, sometimes you see the desire to kill and or be killed. Is that fair?
Yes, and so when we are having individuals that are progressing on the pathway, those are different aspects that you can see, that there is a desire for them to kill or a desire to die that's associated with that, and that really kind of progresses into the next step of violent ideation.
And so talk to us, so that would be the next step along this pathway. And just generally, is this a static kind of flow, or?
No, it's fluid, and so the staircase, depiction of it makes it seem like it's static, like you do one, it goes to the next. But individuals can progress on the pathway. They can go forward through the steps. They can go back off the pathway. They can potentially have overlap in the steps on the pathway. So it's not as static as it appears for the imagery.
So talk to us about what you mean by violent ideation and how that appears.
So when we have somebody that's entered onto the pathway to violence and they've established that first step of that grievance, that slight, that humiliation or injustice that has occurred for them, they're struggling with how to solve that grievance, how to resolve it. And a lot of times they lack the skills and ability to do that. And as they are sitting there in that space of trying to figure out how to resolve it, it progresses into violent ideation. And that really means that they're looking for options and they can't find any non-violent options to resolve that grievance. So then they begin to really focus on violent ideation, and in that violent ideation, that can be suicidality, it can be homicidality, it can be consumption of violent content online, it can be consuming violent imagery with movies and different things in that nature, but really kind of being marinating in violence on that step of the pathway.
And with regard with the consumption of violence, we have. Unfortunately, we have a lot of, celebrity type folks who have committed murders, or I guess I'll put that in quotes, celebrity, famous people who have committed murders. How does that play into this violent ideation aspect of the pathway?
So when you have somebody that is sitting in this space of violent ideation, and they come to that conclusion that it's only through violence that they can resolve their grievance, then you see them start to progress on the pathway, and the next step is research and planning. And in that research and planning is where they will likely encounter key attackers that have perpetuated different violent acts. We find that there becomes a fascination with prior attackers, that there is almost sometimes a fixation on them, and they really start to research specific details about those attackers. And then sometimes what you'll find where they focus that attention is on an attacker that they feel closely represents them or their struggles, or that they start to really see themselves in that attacker.
I want to go, I'm sorry, I've got a little bit ahead, but back into violent ideation. Some of the things that you mentioned, kind of this consumption of violence, besides just violent images and violent videos, can that include different types of violence?
Yes, it can.
Emotional violence, sexual violence.
Yes, what you find is that when they're in this space, they're really starting to find comfort with violence, and it can permeate into other type of violent encounters or different violent material that they're reviewing. And again, it's that theme of marinating in violence that you see as more of a constant.
Could that include video games, pornography, things like that?
It could, yes.
And overall, with this marination in violence, what effect does that have on the offender?
So when you have somebody that's consuming violence in that way, what really happens is a desensitization to that violence, where they start to really, again, it becomes more about their plans and preparation of how they're going to use it versus really kind of contemplating the impacts of that violence. And really that desensitization and sometimes even comfort in seeing it, because it's helping them resolve their struggles that they're having.
And then you mentioned previously, then the next step along this pathway is the research and planning stage. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so at this stage, they've, like I said, they have the grievance likely, they have the violent ideation, they know that they're going to use violence to resolve that grievance. And so the research and planning stage is really to figure out how are they going to do that. And so the research and planning is a very individualized process, and it can take up to 2 years. We've seen in our research of where you have different searches that could happen, you have different plans that you're thinking of, different locations that you're seeking out that potentially you would want to have as your location that you would attack. And so there's a process as they go through that, what kind of weaponry, what type of tools would they need to do the attack, when they would conduct it, all of that.
And I think you mentioned this is where someone can start to fixate on infamous attacks or attackers.
Yes. As they start to review more of those attack details, there may be key factors where they want to adapt something that was used or change something that was used so that they can be more successful in their attack.
And you mentioned that the research and planning, this stage in your research has shown it can take up to 2 years. What about the prior stages that we've talked about, the grievance and the ideation, violent ideation? Do those have kind of a time frame, or is that fluid as well?
That's fluid, and again, the grievance and ideation stage, along with research and planning, it's harder because it's more individualized. And so you can be involved in that, and unless you're telling people about it, no one really knows how long you've had that grievance or how long you have had consumption of violence or fixated on the violent ideation. And so what we see from grievance to research and planning, that is can take longer, that you see as they methodically kind of go through. And specifically research and planning, we know, can go anywhere from a month to 2 years because of how detailed oriented they are in that planning process.
And some of that planning, is some of that kind of physical planning, can it be? Or are we talking more mental planning as well?
It could be both, right? So you can actually have individuals that will, go surveil different, targets, or be involved in trying to understand time of day or the best situation for them to go forward and commit that attack. But then you can also just have the need to mentally prepare for the plans that you have, and you can have somebody really thinking about that. And so again, it's very individualized, and so unless you're looking at someone's digital devices, you don't really know if this stuff is happening.
After the research and planning stage, what would be the next step along this path?
The next step after research and planning is preparation, and really this is where you actually go get the tools to do the attack. So if you think about it in this way, research and planning, you've developed your list of everything you need, you know what you're going to do, metaphorically speaking, right? And then you go forward in preparation to obtain those tools to do the attack. And we find that when individuals enter preparation, this is the duration that they're in this step is really quite diminished compared to the research and planning. So we will find that individuals, once they enter preparation, they can ultimately do the attack within 24 hours to 7 days when they obtain the weaponry to do the attack.
And you mentioned the obtaining of weaponry or items necessary for the attack. Can someone's resources or access to resources play a role in this pathway?
Yes, it can make someone's time on the pathway go faster. So if I already have access to weaponry, or if I already have a knowledge base of that, I don't need to spend much time in preparation. And so really you see someone progress faster if they have knowledge of weaponry, or have access to that, or have knowledge or access to the target that they choose.
Now, after preparation, where do we come next?
So after preparation, we see the next stage is breach. Breach is really in close proximity to the attack. A lot of times you don't see breach until after the attack. What breach is a dry run or security probe to make sure that they're going to be successful with the attack, and then you have the attack.
And could this breach, could that involve the selection of certain tools amongst the tools or items that someone has gathered in their preparation?
Yeah, so really from where breach stands is in that moment, they're ready, and they're kind of what we would call in that last step, right? And so at any moment they can go forward and do the attack. And so a lot of times that will be the staging of the weapons, the gathering the weapons, and being able to be ready to do the attack when they want to. So as an example, we've seen in other cases where we've had those weapons staged like in the bathroom of the building of where the attack occurred.
And so finally we get to attack. Can you tell us about that stage in this process?
Yeah, so the attack is when everything comes together for them. This is they've been considering, planning, and preparing, and this is at the time then when they are going to go forward and propel to action. And as part of that, there's going to be an attack that utilizes violence.
And is this something that in your research has been characterized as a highly personal aspect?
Yes, it is a highly personal, attack. A lot of times when we're looking at these cases, it's very specific to that offender.
And can you explain to the court the idea of the attack being both targeted and opportunistic?
Yeah, so when we look at these cases, what we find is that when someone is selecting the targets, they are going to look at three different factors. They're going to look at what's desirable to them, what's the most desirable location tag that really resolves my grievance, that resolves my the injustice that I'm carrying. What is that's most desirable? Then they have to look at what is vulnerable, because that most desirable target may not be vulnerable. And then they, after that, will consider what's available. And so you may have someone who has considered and planned and prepared and has, a very specific plan, but ultimately find that it's not going to happen in the way that they have been thinking about it and fantasizing about it. And so ultimately they take what's available. And usually there's a high vulnerability to what's available that makes it a successful attack.
And what is can you talk to, and I think you mentioned this before, but the idea of how fantasy versus reality plays a role in this pathway?
So when you have somebody who is on the pathway and struggling with the different things that have impacted them, and whether it's injustice or a slight or humiliation that has occurred, what you find is that when they're in this grievance ideation, research, and planning, they're thinking a lot about this. And they are also starting to really fantasize about what it would look like. And so it's not uncommon for a lot of thought and planning to go into it, and for fantasy to be a part of that. What would be the best case scenario? What would it look like? When you have somebody who has been struggling with being wronged in their life, they start to think about potentially, again, if I want to resolve this, if I want to feel better, who ultimately deserves to pay for what's happened to me. And so you start to see a lot of that projection and fantasy that can happen as they are contemplating propelling to that violent act while they're on the pathway.
And once someone, after they've progressed down this pathway and they are undertaking the attack, does your research show, or are you familiar with, how does that affect the attacker as they are carrying this out?
Yeah, so not based on research, but based on experience and involvement with cases where there has been a mass attack that has occurred. What you find is that because they've considered, planned, and prepared and been methodical about that, that when they get to that actual action of doing the attack, what you will see and you will hear is that it was really focused and really somebody seemed very calm, even though they were perpetrating a massive violent attack.
And what is can you talk to the court about the relationship between suicide and homicide, or suicidal thoughts and homicidal thoughts?
Yes. So in the work that we've been doing at the VAU, what we've seen, we've looked at these cases, is that there's a thin line that emerges between suicidality and homicidality. It's not to say that everybody who's suicidal is going to become homicidal. That's not what I'm saying. But when we look at specifically individuals that have committed acts of targeted violence, we find that a lot of times that homicidality started with suicidality. And so we know in our research that almost half of individuals that went on to commit acts of targeted violence experienced suicidal ideation prior to the attack. And when we could specifically look at those cases, 70% of the time it was within 1 year of the attack. Secret Services also did research on this with school shooters and found that over 70% of them experienced suicidal ideation or suicidal behavior before they did the attack. So what we see develop in these cases is this hopelessness, this despair, this unbearable pain that someone is experiencing. And when they're in that hopeless, helpless place, they start to really think about individuals or factors that have put them there, and that anger and blame starts to get projected to who needs to pay for what's happened to me, who's responsible for this, and then you really see then that being projected into violence and that homicidal act.
And a lot of understanding that the aim, I guess, the ultimate goal of your research and the work that you do is towards prevention. A lot of what you've mentioned is, I think, what you've termed as observed behaviors. Can you explain to the court kind of the challenge of observing behaviors?
Absolutely. So the pathway to violence, or the pathway to intended violence, like I said, it's been around since the 90s, but it had largely been a theoretical model that we had followed in the threat assessment, threat management community. And so in 2024, we had the great opportunity to look specifically at the pathway to intended violence and look at 59 active shooters and see, what do we know about these steps? Is it actually, a valid tool for us to think about? Is it reliable? And so in that, we were able to look at those cases, and we found that 58% of the time, all of the steps of the pathway were intact and observable. So that's great news that 58% you can see progressing through these steps. But the real challenge is that 42% are not observable. And so it's really, in the threat assessment community, when we're looking at prevention, we really need to focus on what's present, what's not present, and then the unknown, and really using that threat assessment and threat management strategies to really uncover that unknown so that we can progress to preventing the violent act. The other aspect that we found in that research that is important is that around 37% of the time where the individuals had no observable behaviors that were present related to the pathway, or not all the pathway steps were observable. 100% of the time the individuals had access to weapons, or 100% of the time they had access to the target. And so that really goes again to how someone can progress fast on the pathway if they have weaponry or knowledge of or access to the target.
And what does it also speak to the idea of I guess secrecy, or can you speak to that? How does that play a role in?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we're dealing with predatory violence, that's the other challenging aspect. Is in order for someone to be successful with predatory violence, they need to progress from considering, planning, and preparing without anybody knowing about it. So what we find as part of this is that as someone is progressing on the pathway, it's very important that they keep that quiet, that they are secret in that. Because if they do not, they will not be successful. And when we're looking at, the place that we are with different, targeted attacks that happen, really it's about how do I get to the other side of this and be successful so that I can be seen and be heard and be known. And that's where that notoriety piece can come in. And so it's very, we see that a lot, where even to the point where law enforcement, when they make contact with someone who maybe they've gotten information about that someone's concerned, that in that moment the individual will really downplay those concerns and really minimize it and really get them to not feel concerned, so they will go away so they can continue to plan and prepare to do the attack. The ultimate goal is to be successful.
And so this pathway really is kind of a goal-oriented pathway.
Yeah, so goal-directed behavior that's moving from thought to action. So the thought part of it is the grievance and the ideation, and really as law enforcement officers and practitioners, we're really trying to understand when someone moves from thought to action. It's when they're starting to apply those behaviors that we get concerned as they're progressing, right? And if from a prevention standpoint, the earlier we can get involved, the better.
And I may have asked you about this, but I wanted to step back to the attack portion of the pathway. That can be both pre-planned and opportunistic in terms of the victims. Is that accurate?
Yes, it doesn't. In these attacks, the victims of the crimes, it doesn't necessarily have. They don't necessarily have to have a personal relationship with the offender. It's more about the number of casualties in that attack.
And speaking of the number of casualties, based on your research and experience, with regards to folks who have used or attempted to use bombs or explosive devices, does that hold any significance to you in the work that you do?
Yeah, so in looking at the experience that we have with these different cases, you will find that when you have interest in bomb making materials or in constructing bombs, that makes, again, if you're looking at how can I stand out, how can I be known differently than others that are committing these acts, it sets the stage for you to be more knowledgeable, more sophisticated. It also has the impact potentially to increase the number of casualties, which will also increase your notoriety. You have, again, a way to set yourself apart. And also the other aspect is that anytime there's bombs or explosives being used, there's real power that's attached to that. And I think that when you're looking at individuals that are trying to resolve grievances and take back that control or punish others for what's happened to them, that ultimately you see that come into play with the explosives. And if you look at the number of targeted attacks that we have happen in the United States, it's hard to stand out with how many are happening. And so it's one way to really kind of set that stage different for that person.
And so that is part of the goals, I guess, in some of these attacks is to stand out and be the best or worst or most famous. Is that fair to say?
Yes, we really see that one of the motivating drivers is to be a somebody versus a nobody, and then in addition to that, resolving that injustice that has happened to them.
In the, I want to step back to the preparation stage. One of the things that's mentioned in your articles is the creation of artifacts. Can you talk to the court about that?
Because of the individualized nature of these attacks, you really find that people will do things specific that's important to them. And so there could be different artifacts that are created. It can be, writings on the weapon or on the ammunition. It can be notes that is left behind. It can be maps that are drawn. Again, they are considering, planning, and preparing how they want this attack to be successful, and those different events, given what you're thinking about, could be props in that bigger plan.
In your research, can you talk to the court about the role of, or the incidents involving when a family member is a victim of one of these targeted attacks?
Yeah, so we find that in our research, it's probably only around 10 to 13% where you have a primary family member that could be a victim at the beginning of the crime or during the crime. And again, we don't have key research findings that say exactly why that is. Anecdotally, what we've seen in our cases that we've been exposed to is, one, it can be that individual that was killed was a part of that original grievance set, or that establishment of that grievance, that injustice that occurred for that person. The other aspect that we have seen is that it can be because of their care and love for that person, that they don't want their loved one to have to see what they're about to do, and so they will end up killing them before the attack. And then we've also seen it used as a way to punish people that are left behind, and so those are the three different occurrences that we've seen with the cases that we've worked.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
To the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Gibson.
Good morning.
The common thread in your direct testimony was really this grievance. That seems to be a central part of this type of violence. Is that right?
So a lot of times we see a grievance, yes.
I think you indicated that 21% of the time you don't find out what the grievance is.
Yes, 21% of the time it was determined to be unable to be determined in that research project.
But 79% of the time you were able to determine the grievance.
Correct.
And in some ways it sounds like from what you're describing, the attack tends to be some sort of revenge for whatever the grievance is.
That's one potential motivating driver for it.
Okay. I was looking at some of your articles and I noticed something. You indicated that research has shown at least one bystander witnessed one or more concerning behaviors in 100% of the cases reviewed.
Yes, that was the research that was published in 2024. Is that the one you're referencing? Yes, that's correct.
Double check that. I have August of 2023. This is the Pathway to Targeted Violence, Camp Early Intervention Work.
Okay, that was an article. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So 100% of the time in this research, bystanders witness one or more concerning behaviors.
So, can you state the first part, though, what you stated with that, with the actual quote of what was written in the article?
Research has shown at least one bystander witnessed one or more concerning behaviors in 100% of the cases.
Yes, and so we have found that in the research that we've been able to complete, that a lot of times that bystanders will see concerning behaviors, and we've seen that it can be one, but it more likely has been even more than that.
point me in the article where you're reading from.
Page 47, Your Honor,
Thank you.
about halfway through the bottom paragraph.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. And you didn't speak much about it on your direct, but explain to me what leakage is.
Yes, so leakage is something that we see where you have the individual either through writings or through actual conversations or interactions with individuals. It leaks their fixation on violence or leaks their fixation on in that leaking of that fixation on violence, it can be either suicidal or homicidal kind of themes, where the individuals around them will wonder, okay, what's that all about? And we tend to look for grievance or tend to look for leakage and see if it's present.
And the same paper that I was just speaking about on page 48, under the leakage section, you note that 88% of active shooters age 17 and younger were found to have leaked their intent to commit violence.
Yes.
So a huge majority have some sort of leakage, right?
So we see leakage being present very often, yes, and we see it being present in adolescents more than adults.
On direct, you were asked about the consumption of violent content, including video games, right?
Correct.
There's a lot of violent content out there, right?
Correct.
And most of us are consumers of it at some level, right?
Correct.
There's television shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Movies,
Yes.
video games.
Yes, there's lots of content out there for people to consume.
I happen to like the show You, right? Like that kind of thing. Doesn't make people who consume that content inevitably going to commit some sort of targeted act, correct?
No, it's not causative.
So I think what you were speaking about when you talked about that is that in this sort of stair step that you have, as somebody is progressing along that, they start consuming a lot of it. Is that fair?
It's really in that step specifically, we see them consuming that violence, and it can be in different forms or fashions, and the volume can definitely be there as well. But it's really just kind of defining what that is, and meaning not just ideation, but violent ideation is the really kind of focus.
And so in that sort of step up, you would typically see some sort of increased consumption of that kind of content. Is that fair?
So I don't really necessarily increase, but more, I would say, if we were to look at the totality of factors, you're going to see a theme, and the theme is going to consistently be of violence. Whether that volume is there is going to be dependent on their specific life circumstances. You know, so if they have access to those devices or have access to different content, you could see it increase as they started to become more fixated. Absolutely.
But you typically see that sort of fixation on that content.
On violence, yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Further, Mr. Ball?
Yes, just a few follow-up questions. With regards to what counsel asked you about, mentioned revenge as a motivator, and you said it could be one of them. What are some of the other motivators? So
you can have, again, for somebody that is in this space, you can have that desire to kill, that desire to be killed. You can have the actual injustice that they're focused on. You can also have that ability to solve an unbearable problem for them, this unbearable pain that they want that resolved. And so you start to see those themes develop in addition to the revenge, right? The revenge goes specifically to an injustice that has occurred or a slight. Not everybody has that. People can have global distaste and anger and frustration about their life and where they are, and really blame a lot of people for that because that's where they are in the time in their life.
You were also asked about bystander witnesses. Do bystander witnesses always know that they are a bystander witness when they are, I guess, witnessing this behavior?
Not necessarily. I mean, bystanders are in a position to have that front row seat to look at and interact with that person. And unfortunately, what we see is even with that access to that data, a lot of times they are, again, looking at that picture and it becomes more normalized to them, or they're not able to understand the significance that's attached to that. So we see limited reporting of bystanders that are closest to those persons that go on to commit attacks.
Could also be the possibility that, bystander witnesses may not make themselves available. There may be bystander witnesses that observe behavior but just don't say anything.
Correct.
Or in some cases, they could be victims of the attacker.
Yes, that is true.
When you talk about leakage being present in a majority of cases involving adolescents, that can come in lots of different forms. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
It could be schoolwork.
Yes, there could be themes that come out in the schoolwork that's turned in.
Okay. And it may not be something that at the time is concerning to the teacher or the school. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it kind of depends on the volume or the context of where that's coming in, right? And so they are seeing one slice that day related to that content, so they may be able to then think of it as it's routine, or maybe marginalize it or minimize it. And it's not until you kind of start to put all those puzzle pieces together or those different slices together that you really see the true picture that's there.
And if someone is withdrawn or isolated, would that kind of assist or that make the possibility of leakage diminish?
So it definitely can contribute to that. So what the bystander would see, they wouldn't hear or see the leakage. What they would see is that person withdrawing. They'd see that person kind of going, doing things on their own, or being, maybe depressed or that type of behavior. And so it doesn't technically fit the definition of leakage because, again, it's that behavior is withdrawing from that action or interacting with others. But if there was more conversation or looking at that, you might find that there would be more content available. And that's the hard part for bystanders just in general, is that it's very easy to discount what you see or to not understand the significance of it, because you can easily say they're just having a bad day today. This is, how do I know specifically what this person is going through? That I just have this very narrow optic. And so you find that minimization happens a lot with our bystanders, and there's many reasons why they don't come forward and they struggle with that reporting pattern.
Thank you, no further questions.
Just for that.
Very briefly, I'm going to talk about bystanders again. So your research is a post hoc view of these situations, right?
What you post?
Post hoc. So these events have already occurred, right?
Yes. So the research that we've talked about today is on individuals that have committed acts of targeted violence.
And so you looked at the materials available in those situations, right?
Correct.
So we're not talking about 100% of cases have people in advance say, I'm seeing something concerning, right?
No, so it's in the research that we looked at, we were able to code those files up into the time of where the attack occurred, and that's what we relied on for that. In my casework and experience, that we deal with individuals who haven't committed acts of targeted violence, and so we see some of that inaction with the bystander reporting come to light in those cases as well.
Absolutely. So in the research, you were looking after the fact for information that people after the fact say, I saw some concerning behavior, I didn't realize it was concerning necessarily.
Not necessarily in that way. So when we coded those files, we coded the files up until the time of the attack and didn't look at the stuff that happens after the attack. To specifically look at and inform that, to basically try to make it be as pristine as possible in the event of what would be seen before the attack happened and looking at that. Now in other discussions, we hear and talk with people after the attack as well that kind of informs this, what we're talking about. But I just want to be clear that I'm not taking, in that research, we're not looking at somebody who says, oh, I saw this and I didn't think it was significant. We're looking at what there was reported, what they saw before the attack happened.
Oh, okay. So in 100% of the cases reviewed, there was at least one bystander who witnessed one or more concerning behaviors, as in before the attack raised an alarm bell.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't think I understood that fully. No further questions.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you, sir.
Further evidence would say.
No, Your Honor, the state rests for purposes of this hearing.
All right. So we conclude the state's evidence for the sentencing hearing, and my agreement will be beginning at 9. We'll be beginning at 9:30 Tuesday morning with the evidence for the defense. Is there anything else that we need to take up before we recess today?
Not for the state.
Not for the defense.
All right, very well. We'll stand in recess until 9:30 Tuesday.
Yes, Your Honor, Superior Court be in recess until 09:30 hours Tuesday.